Welcome to today's session, Design Thinking in Action, Models that Move Innovation Forward. I'm Datev, your meeting coordinator, and I am excited to kick off what promises to be an insightful and hands-on experience. Let me start with a quick word about the organization behind today's session. Product Management Advisor, or PMA, isn't just a platform. It's a thriving community, proven-driven community built for product professionals. Whether you are just breaking into the field or leading at the highest level, PMA is here to support your growth. We offer a curated job board and AI-powered resume tools, expert mentorship, self-paced learning, and industry insights, all designed to help you advance with clarity and confidence. Today's event reflects that mission, connecting real-world application with high-impact learning. To help us open the session, I would love to hand to Rose, and he is the founder of the company. He will present about the event, and he will be one of the hosts of this event. Later on, we will talk about our featured expert, but for now, I will give the word to Ross. So, Ross, please take over.
Great, thank you, Tatev. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So welcome again, everyone. It's great to have you here. I'm especially excited because today's session reflects exactly what Product Management Advisor was built to be, not just a community, but a learning community. And today's event and future events will honor that mission, which is all about sharing experiences, sharing knowledge, learning, of course, and ultimately advancing product management careers. So I'm thrilled you've chosen to spend this time with us. We've got a great session ahead. So without further ado, let's dive in and make the most of it. Tatev, back to you.
Thank you. So, I want to speak more about our featured expert, Vikas Mahajan, who is a product leader with more than a decade of experience leading AI and cloud transformation initiatives. Vikas brings a practical lens to innovation, turning buzzwords into business value. And today he will guide us through the design thinking models, including those developed at IDEO, Stanford, and the Double Diamond Framework. He will help us understand how these approaches can drive better decisions, deeper collaboration, and smarter solutions. Whether you are here to improve your product, refine your process, or simply think differently, this session is for you. And a quick reminder, we will keep things interactive. Feel free to drop any questions and comments. You in our chat can address all your questions. We will have time to discuss after Vikas finishes his presentation. So please take over. Let's jump in, and Vikas, the stage is yours. You can share the screen and start presenting.
Okay. Thank you, Ross and Tatev, for the introduction and setting the context for this meeting. I'm just trying to share the deck first, and then maybe we'll get into the topic, right? Tatev, I'm not getting an option to share. It's saying it's not allowing to share.
Give me a second. Can you try again?
Yes, now I can. Okay. So let me know once you guys are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can. I see your screen.
Okay. Hope you guys can see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, guys. So without further ado, let's get into the topic now, because since Ross and Tatev has already explained the context why we are doing this session and essentially what is the goal of the PMA community, why it exists, right? And this session and this topic especially is basically to add on to the vision of the product management advisor community, where we wanted to focus on design thinking, where I think as a product managers, this is a core focus when we, let's say, work on any problem statement, right? So design thinking is a human centered approach where basically you can understand how to approach the problem statement correctly, having an empathy with the user, thinking from user standpoint, and also try and bring problem solving into play effectively, and fostering collaboration and ensuring the solution is always tailored to the problem statement and the needs of the user, right? So this is basically a session which will focus heavily on that, right? But before we go into slides, right, so I'll add couple of things for design thinking topic, right? Design thinking is a mindset. It's a methodology which really governs the fundamental principles. So what you're gonna see in the deck, right, is we are focused on what has been the evolution of design thinking, different kind of global models that really put design thinking approach into play, right? And then what are the top 10 models that design thinking promotes basically, and can be used in day-to-day activities. And like I said, product management is just one of the areas. The beauty of design thinking is it pretty much applies to any role that we are doing, whether you are an architect, you are a project manager, you are a program manager, or you are into product management, right? All the areas you're eventually solving some problem, right? And this is where I think design thinking is very generic in nature, and it is always a guideline, so we need to remember before we go into the topic, right? So it is a guideline which really tells you this is how you should approach, but nothing is like very stringent or very specific that you have to do in certain way. So these models that we're going to look into are also very generic in nature, right? So you can apply based on the need, right? So depending on the life cycle of the product or project that you're dealing with, you can always reuse these models into any stages that you feel it will help out, right? So you will understand more once I go into the details. And one more thing is, you need to really approach this session in a way where you will see a lot of things getting repeated, because essentially any methodology or mindset developing framework, right, this will always try and put a lot of similar concepts into your mind so that it becomes part of your day to day thinking, okay? So this is a foundation of design thinking topic, how it should be looked at. So now I think I'll move into the slides, okay? And I'll try and cover one aspect, and then I'll pause for a questions also if you have any. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the first thing, the first slide is why design thinking, right? This is very primarily a thought that comes into mind when we say design thinking. Okay, so why design thinking is, what is design thinking? We have already covered. It's a human centered approach and an iterative approach of problem solving, right? So why it is human centered? We are saying it's human centered because it is like very basic and common sense driven methodology. Okay, so there is nothing like which is rocket science in design thinking, but it emphasizes a lot on the basics, the common sense, the basics, how you should approach, how you should validate your approach, right? Stuff like that. Okay, and why it is important is, a, it is purely user centric, so it will really focus a lot on empathy, thinking from user standpoint for which you're trying to build a solution, right? So you have to think from that person's perspective, what are the pain points, how that person thinks, what are his preferences, right? Stuff like that, right? So that you ensure the product or solutions you're building, they meet the real user needs. Okay, second aspect is it reduces risks. As I said, a lot of time once you are deep into your process of developing a solution, right? So a lot of time there is a tendency where you will get comfortable. Okay, so design thinking really helps you, keeping you aware of the risks, and keep on validating at every juncture of the building a solution, right? So this is very important. And then obviously it really fosters a lot of creativity and collaboration. I'll put these two together because once you start collaborating with group of people, right, so it's not one mind at a job, right? So you're leveraging power of different mindsets, different opinions, right? So one of the very important pillars of design thinking is how do you manage that process of facilitating stakeholder management, getting the ideas out in a very simple way. Because a lot of time the challenge is a lot of people have good inputs, but then they are hesitant, or then you're not able to get the inputs out of them, right? So this is where design thinking heavily focuses on collaboration, and then it results into creativity out of the box. Yeah. And then obviously it is a industry proven success methodology or mindset or framework, right? It is being used by Apple, Google, and IBM, the people who have built real products, which you can see already are example of. They are very useful. They have been a big success. So for example, Google search, right, if you look at it, so it started with a very simple mission statement of to make the search simplified and accessible for the users, right? Just one line. And this strong vision statement followed by a design thinking approach has really resulted in a tool which is being, I think, leveraged by almost everybody on planet Earth, right? So this is the power of the framework. It is basic, but then obviously basics are more important than the fancy stuff always. Yeah. So this is why design thinking is very important. Let's move on to the next slide, which really focuses on what is the importance of design thinking in problem solving. What are the certain advantages if we look deep, right? So basically it is a, when we say design thinking, obviously there is a very strong design aspect. And when I say design, it means structure, right? Whether you're an architect, you're a product person, so design here means having a structure. Okay. And then the key benefits it brings on to plate, what is in especially when we say problem solving is, so it really takes you deep in terms of understanding the user, having empathy with the user, right? There is a concept in design thinking which I'll cover later, right? So being convergent and being divergent, okay, which basically means where you need to be very experimental and explorative, design thinking tells you by identifying the life cycle of the project or product you're dealing with, right? Where you are in your product problem solving cycle, right? You should be like more experimental, which is basically being divergent. Okay. So you should be open to different inputs, you should be explorative, right? And then once you really start going towards the execution, or let's say the implementation of the solution that you're targeting, you need to be very precise, so you need to become convergent. Okay. I'll cover this later in a slide as well. So this is where how it fosters deep understanding. And then obviously another aspect of design thinking is, like I was telling you earlier, you should not be complacent with whatever you are building, whatever analysis you have done. So it always tells you to revalidate at a given checkpoint in a problem solving cycle, right? So it always tell you to keep on checking after a certain checkpoint if it is going in the right direction, through prototypes, through MVP, through A/B testing, right? So there are different models that we're gonna discuss. So this is where it ensures it reframes the problem statement. Okay. And then obviously it really promotes, it is very similar to agile mindset in that sense. It also focuses and advocates iterative building of a solution, not like you build full blown solution in one go, right? We're dealing with, let's say, 20 aspects of a solution in one go, because it really increases the risk and chances of really jeopardizing the quality of the solution. Okay. So it really promotes building small and building in a iterative way, in a way which is more secure and more proven. Okay. Then it really drives on collaboration. Okay. Like there are different models which will help you understand how you can easily facilitate communication, how can you bring right inputs out of the people, right? By being doing certain activities and following certain models. Okay. And then obviously it reduces uncertainty because it focuses heavily on validation of your solution also, where it will focus more on MVP and how do you really do prototyping well. You will have certain techniques and model where you focus on how to prototype a solution. Okay. Okay, so next one is like I've again put down the top players in the world, where these are the most popular examples of how design thinking helped these companies. So maybe there is one dedicated slide for details of these use cases, how they, what problem they were facing, and how design thinking helped. Right. So I'll cover in the subsequent slides. Okay, so with this, I've covered till now, like why is design thinking important and what role it plays in problem solving. So I think I'll believe I'll take a pause here for a second to see if there is any questions. Right? Please feel free if there is any question, anyone.
You can address all your questions in our Q&A section. You should be able to submit. So go ahead, write down, and we will answer it.
Yeah, you can write there as well. We'll cover in the end, checking at that. And if in middle also you have any question, feel free to stop me, yeah, and ask the question.
Yes,
Okay.
and if you are seeing any issue, I will drop our LinkedIn post link to our chat, so you should be able to address this. You can connect us on LinkedIn, and we can help you there as well.
Okay, I think we shall continue. I think there's no questions for now. Okay, so now since we've covered like what is design thinking definition, why is it important, how what role it plays in problem solving, let's now start going into the common models and frameworks on which I can see something in chat. Okay, that was mentioned. Okay, so basically now we're going to look at the common standard models globally available, which really are the different ways to visualize design thinking. Okay, so these are the global frameworks. Okay, so the first one is Stanford. So Stanford is a widely recognized framework, right? It again really focuses. If you see, this is what we're gonna discuss in detail in this presentation. This is one of the foundation models of design thinking. So if you see, what it says is it really focuses on iterative nature of problem solving. So what it's saying is always break down your solutions, right, into small chunks so that you can follow a repetitive cycle of, let's say, different stages where you pick a piece of your solution, you start following this process which Stanford lays down, and then you repeat the cycle again. So for example, it says you should have an empathize phase as a starting point when you start with any problem statement, right? So what it means is you should not only focus on the problem statement, but you should try and understand the user standpoint behind that. How do you do that? By understanding the personas. Again, I'm going to cover persona in detail. What does persona mean? So for now, you can imagine understanding user better. What is the role of the objective? What is the decisions, challenges, pain points of the user, right, or the person for which you're building this solution, right? Then try and define the scope, okay, of the problem statement. By doing all this analysis correctly, then you come to a define phase where you actually want to define the scope of the problem statement, right, or the solution. So this is where I think the most of the miscommunication happens. People fail to define the scope of the solution correctly, right? So for example, if you are building a streaming video streaming service, right, for example, so tendency can be there where you will try and put all the fancy features upfront in the product, right, which can really hit the team hard in terms of skills being available, the resources being available, okay, and the estimation complexity. So all kind of risks come into play when your scope definition is not correct. Okay, so I think define should be very important, especially for the product management people. So we really worry a lot about empathize and define stage. Okay, and then obviously once you have defined the scope, so Stanford model says then you can focus on ideation, where you start ideating how the solution will look like now, because you know the scope of the solution, what you're trying to build, right? How do you build it, right? All the ideas are worthy. This is where you really diverge first to get all kind of inputs. What can be the probable solutions, what are the pros, what are the cons, doing technology comparison, doing company. So a lot of time there is a guidance from the enterprise organization, as in let's say a board of architect or somebody, right? So those guidances should be taken into consideration. What are the preferred platforms, what are the advantages? So this is where ideate you have to think through like this. Okay, then you move on to prototype, where it is more about, in product world we'll say MVPs, right? Minimal viable product, to establish the concept correctly and prove it is feasible and it is actually achievable in terms of resources, the skills available, the impact the solution is going to bring. All those aspects have to be proven by a MVP or a prototype. Okay, and then obviously A/B testing. When we say testing, it is like it can be A/B, it can be some other testing. But when we say test here in this Stanford model, it basically means to check and validate also correctly. Okay, understanding what is working, what is like the challenges, or what are the bugs in the system. This is the purpose of end-to-end Stanford design thinking process. Okay. Then the next one is IDEO model. So like I explained, there are three global models which governs design thinking. There again, like I said, design thinking, you will feel a lot of things are like very repetitive and similar in nature, because idea is to basically get this thought into the mind of a person, where you start thinking like a design person approaching any problem statement you're trying to build solution for, right? So IDEO model, if you ask me, it really focuses heavily on this aspect of where you need to converge and where you need to diverge. Okay, so if you see in each phase, so it splits your journey of problem solving into three phases: where inspiration, where it is a lot of research, understanding customers, how the customers are, what are the synthesis involved, right? This is inspiration phase, and it is heavily divergent if you see with the graph peaks, right? So it is automatically telling you you need to be very experimental and explorative here in this phase, right? Then you come to ideation, where if you see the peaks have reduced. Okay, so what it is telling you is now you need to use the combination of diverging when you're ideating, but when you're prototyping you need to converge, right? And if you see implementation, so I always tell this to any teams we are giving design thinking sessions. So you have to split always your analysis, your ideation as in more heavily divergent processes. And once you get into implementation, the purpose of being experimental and explorative upfront was exactly to be precise in your implementation, because you have done everything, you have tested everything, checked all the pros and cons, explored all the scenarios, done competitor analysis stuff, right? So you know now what features we are targeting, because we know those features bring value. We have done the estimation of them correctly, how much effort, what kind of technology, right, in the ideate phase. And then obviously our implementation should be smooth, right? So if you see, the peak of being divergent reduces here drastically in the implementation phase. So this is the crux of IDEO model. Okay. So you have to remember design thinking with these words, where you need to be convergent, where you need to be divergent, what are the phases, how you need to build. Because like you are working in different projects even today, right? Or you're handling different products, right? So one of the aspects beauty of design thinking is it is not only for, let's say, building products or projects from scratch. You can also evaluate your existing products or projects from a lens of problem solving, if you're following things correctly. And it makes you more aware of some questions that will come automatically to your mind now, once you've gone through a design thinking workshop. So you will immediately try and understand. First thing you will try and do is going back, identify which stage you are in currently of the problem solving. If you are in development, if you are in inspiration, if you are in ideation phase, this really changes your mindset. So you'll automatically know I am in an inspiration or analysis phase, where I'm doing some customer analysis, so I need to be more divergent. Yeah. And if you are in implementation phase, you need to be more convergent. Okay. So the third and the last model which drives design thinking is double diamond. So this is again very strong model. It really is a strong model in the sense it says, if you see the slide, design the right things, That is very important. And then you have to design things rightly also. So it focuses on both the aspects. So first aspect, if you see where we were talking of analysis, so it says you need to really make sure you're designing the right thing, you're solving the problem. First step is you're solving an actual problem for the user, right, or the stakeholders. It should not be a problem which doesn't matter to them, or it's not a problem at all for them, right? So your problem has to be correct, then your analysis has to be correct, right? So you have to design the right thing. Once you have done everything, you have scoped your solution correctly, this is what I'm going to solve with my solution, right? And you have a strategy, this is the geography I'm going to target, all those aspects are checked. Then obviously in the next phase where you focus heavily on the implementation of building the solution, you always will be driven via this north star of designing things right now. So how the system will behave, how you're validating its behavior, that has to be correct also. Yeah. So this is double diamond model, which says problem into two phases basically. One is insight into problem, scope down the focus, and then there is a delivery or solution aspect where you say, okay, well, these are my potential solutions, and this is the solution that will work. Obviously, with a proven feedback from the stakeholders. This is where MVP or prototype comes into play. So I hope I've covered all three models correctly. It is very simple, but it is more about analogy that we have in mind, right? While approaching any problem solving situation. Okay. So now let's move on to the stages of design thinking, because we have discussed the three models. So now if you see with these three models, what they have done is for design thinking, they have now defined a universal 5 stages. And I just to remember for ease, I call it as adapt. Okay. Whereas E is empathize, gain a deeper understanding of the users, define is clearly articulate the problem to be solved, and ideate is generate a wide range of ideas and solutions. And then obviously prototype, where you, and from, let's say, so you can already see the color coding, I've used the color coding, so you are basically being convergent now into prototype and test phase. Okay. Test, you are heavily convergent. Prototype, you are medium convergent. And then ideate, you start becoming convergent. But empathize and define, you are purely divergent. Okay. So this is a concrete stages of design thinking. So like I said, any project, any product you're dealing with currently, so you have to first identify which stage we are in currently. Okay. This will really help you understand the models that we're going to discuss after this slide and how to use, right? But you got the point. With these stages, first thing, via design thinking, you'll know where I need to be explorative and where I need to be very concise and precise. Okay. Okay. So the next section is basically the models that I wanted to focus on. Okay. So for each stage, so what I've done in this presentation is for each stage, there is a certain kind of models and techniques you need to follow to really make design thinking come into play. It should not be theoretical or just the words, right? So it should be on the paper and in form of some activities. Okay. So if you see, first stage was adapt, right? So first was empathy. Okay. So everything which will start a slide which will be like 1.1, 1.2, this is for empathy, the first step. Okay. So user interviews, again, very important tool, and again, I think misunderstood and not correctly used in a lot of products and projects or solution building activities, right? Because uh, there are two reasons, right? One is there is a lot of hesitation approaching users, and sometimes there is a lot of let's say layers between end user and the actual team building the solution. And this is where I think you can essentially see why a community like product management advisor is very important, because very few places you get the right exposure. So product people, they act as a bridge between, let's say, end users, stakeholders, business people, and the development teams delivering the solutions. So essentially, if you see, this is more of a job of a product person to conduct or facilitate such user interviews. Okay. And basically this interviews, right, user interview, it lays foundation of lot of design thinking processes and your problem solving life cycle as well. So for example, if you've conducted a user interview correctly, right, So you can always use it later for defining an empathy map. I'll explain you what is an empathy map, but then understanding user better. And in order to simplify further, you can use it for usability testing, like you can see in the screenshot of what I've put in the life cycle, right? So if you see empathize, define, ideate. So in empathize, you will do a user interview correctly to understand user better, his concerns, his aspirations better, and then you will use leverage the same in form of usability testing, where a lot of inputs will go from user interviews. Okay, so this is where you can see understanding the stages of your problem solving process, and then these techniques will help you, right? So you should understand the stages also correctly. How do you conduct a user interview? So I always suggest, when you're conducting a user interview, right, as an interviewer, you have to be very clear the kind of questions you frame. That is very important, because the quality of questions and the kind of questions is the only thing which is going to lead to meaningful inputs for you. Like, for example, you can approach a customer, right, asking him whether he's looking for an on-prem solution, whether he's looking for a cloud solution, how much, what is his preference, let's say security versus performance, or aesthetics versus the feature availability, right? So those kind of things which really laid a very strong foundation for your testing as well as for the development, right? Like, these are the aspirations, these are the factors, and then obviously you set those aspirations and those aspects as a north star for your program. Okay, so they keep on driving each and every aspect of your program. So this is where user interview. And again, user interview is an activity where you can see the beauty of design thinking. It is just about user interviews. So a lot of people ask me this question, like, at what stage user interviews can they be only used in empathize phase? So my answer is always no, because see, you can always conduct a user interview by end of everything also. Like, you build a solution, everything is done, right? You can always do an user interview to get his feedback also on the solution, right? So it is an activity, user interview, but your purpose of interview can change depending on what you're trying to achieve out of this user interview. Okay, and I put some steps also, because like I said, you should never go unstructured for these interviews. You should be very clear, what is my goal, what is I'm trying to get out of this interview. Yeah, so you have to lead the customer into answering, getting things out of his mind. Yeah. Next one is observation studies. Again, it goes into the empathy part of being understanding user's perspective. Empathy means understanding user, thinking from user's shoes, right? So if you see, they've simplified A, E, I, O, U vowels, right? So we have all read in childhood, these are English vowels. So this observation study is built on vowels so that it's very easy to remember. A is for activities, right? So what are the kind of activities users are involved in? What is the environment? Are they on-prem heavy? Are they already on cloud? This is environment. Interactions, what kind of interactions are there with the system? So for example, a weather application, right? So what all external systems it interacts with to gather the information. This is where interactions become very important, right? Objects, so basically the kind of tools and technologies they are currently dealing with, right? They are familiar with. How it is important is, so always, if you notice, right, so if you're building a solution which will be later on used by the customers, right, or the users, right, or the technology team from the customers, right? So obviously, you they have a certain comfort zone. So for example, Grafana dashboards, right? These are operational dashboards. So if you work with any big organization, right, so a lot of operational stuff is being tracked on Grafana. And imagine if you are building a solution, right, on some other dashboard, there is a huge learning curve for them, and you are taking them out of their comfort zone, right? So you have to be very careful in understanding the existing environment and ecosystem of the current landscape that your customers deal with, the technologies they use. And this is where heavily the observation studies focuses on, basically. And then obviously user, what motivates them, what is their goal, end goal that they're trying to achieve, right? So like I said, then they become a north star for your program. Yeah. So the goal is basically to keep your project or the solution always tailored to the user needs. Okay. Then the next one is empathy mapping. So this is where the input from user interviews, it really become an input for empathy map. So you have interviewed your customer or stakeholder, right? And now you understand what that person basically is thinking in its mind, right? What are the goals, what are the aspirations? So empathy map is a model in design thinking which really says, now you have got the information via user interview, you got the data. How do you structure this data now so that you can leverage it more accurately and in a very diligent way, right? So it is all about breaking now user interview into what was user saying, what he thinks, right, what he does and what he feels of a current process. If you're trying to, let's say, improve a current system, right? So what he thinks about a current system, what are their current activities, what are they doing currently. So if you see, a lot of our uh, new initiatives in product in today's world is more about digitalization, transforming the culture of, let's say, the legacy systems, making them more cloud agnostic, bringing the solutions onto cloud, killing the silos, right? This is where I think it's very important. If you use empathy map correctly, you will understand there are a lot of bottlenecks correctly. For example, how the AWS cloud was founded, right? So they exactly did this activity in understanding the existing problem or demeanor of the stakeholder or the user for which they were trying to build cloud solutions, right? Correctly, what are their correct exact pain points, what are they saying, what are they thinking in their mind. So it is more about now putting your data in a very structured way so that you can address it correctly also via your solution. Okay. So how it works is basically, so you will have you will identify the key user or stakeholder. You will prepare some open-ended questions like what is frustrating you most, right? So this will get you covered in the field part. What are your current activities that you do for a current solution you are using, right? So then these are the kind of questions. So this is where I was telling you, all these activities, your preparation and homework is very important. The kind of questions you ask, these are all leading questions. This will lead the customer in answering information in the way you want. Okay. This is where persona is very important, because entire empathy map is about user, right? Understanding from their shoes. And persona reflects or represents your user, but again to a detail that you want to understand your users. Because see, it's not an emotional connect, honestly, right? You're trying to do some solutioning for some customers, so you would like to understand their profile basically when we say personas, right? So when we say profile, it is like what is the name to identify the customers, then their demographic details, which geography they belong to. So why this is important is, so for example, somebody living in US, right, versus somebody in let's say Asia, right? So you can always see there are a lot of personality traits and which can be different by default. Yeah. So you would have heard, right? So a lot of Western people, they will think in a certain way. A lot of Asian people will think in a certain way. This is where demographics become very important. Another aspect of demographic is the population aspect. So for example, if you're building a solution for a country like New Zealand, where I think you have very low density, right? Or in terms of number of people per kilometer, right? So versus you're building a solution for a country like India, where I think the density is super high, right? So all these things really put a lot of inputs into your solutioning, right? How do you handle? So for example, India versus New Zealand, already you would know, like India, you anything you're building, and if you're targeting a massive, let's say, customer base of India, you really need to have a solution which is like have scaling capability of very huge handling traffic handling capabilities, right? And which can be like a okay or a medium requirement for a low density profile area, right? So these are the kind of information that you try and understand. Obviously the pain points, what are the personality traits. Personality trait is again very important, because a lot of customers are there basically who will have certain aspects already. Like for example, if there is a country which really deals with a lot of security aspects, and on soil initiatives are very important, like the data privacy is very stringently applied in those countries, right? So you will already know before even approaching customer, they are going to be very much concerned about data privacy. And if you can cover this by default into your pitch and your proposal of the solution, this really gives you an edge. This is where I think personality traits and stuff is very important. Okay. So this is more about persona. So you have to understand the description, biography of the customer as well, and what are their goals, what are their needs, what are their current situations, right? What kind of setup they are. So this is all part of persona. So next one, the last one, I think in the empathy map is customer journey mapping. Okay, wherein basically you will rely heavily on understanding the customer journey. So this is a thumb rule in product world especially. So for example, if you're building an solution for, let's say, airports, okay, so don't you think we should know the entire customer journey? So how a person checks in into the airport, how he submits his luggage, what happens to the luggage, how he moves on from the security check, what are the pain points of the customer, for example, what kind of experiences they have when they're spending time waiting for security checks, what kind of time each step takes, where are the scope of improvements. All this information really helps you in targeting the right solution, identifying. So this is where a customer journey is very important. Okay, so if you see, I've given an example in the slide of a purchasing e-com experience, where I mean e-com is again a lot of steps, right? You go to to the e-com website, you select, you search for the right product, then you check the reviews, then you add it to cart, then you check out, then payment happens. Then obviously after payment there is order placed, then obviously there is a support even after once the order is placed, right? So you have to support customers, right, for e-com. So this is again a classic example where if you understand the end-to-end customer journey and you really focus on the pain points correctly, you will understand which area needs improvement. How can you make your product more sellable, easy to use, right? And having a good customer experience for the customers, right? So this is all about customer journey mapping. This is very important and again highly misused in the industry. We don't put an effort to understand the customer journey, so we worry about the problem statement that is given to us and we try and just solve that without understanding the overall context, right? So customer journey really sets up the context correctly. Okay, so in the adapt, like I said, so first one was empathy, second one is define. And if you see define, it starts with a point of view statement. So it is like user needs this for establishing a way to achieve this because of XYZ reason. So it is structured like this. So you should always try and write a POV statement whenever you are starting fresh with any problem statement that you're trying to solve. So the entire purpose of this model is to make you always think in a way where you will say, I will always translate my problem statement into a POV statement so that I can address the aspects. Yeah. So it's very simple, but it is more of putting and using this into practice. Second one, to define stages, how might we, how the solutions might look like. Okay. Again, it is like I've already covered this. So again, like I said, it's gonna be repetitive because a lot of models will try and bring you more closer to this divergent and convergent thinking. So now you can clearly see with this diagram, you start in a very divergent way, but ultimate goal is to get convergent thinking into play, right? So divergent, what are my needs? How might we satisfy the customer? And then where you're gonna become convergent is, okay, this is now my focus for building the solution correctly, and these are the core needs, and what is the solution which is more appropriate. So this is where you become concise. So this is called how might we. Again, very simple thing, but then if we don't ask such questions in our mind, you will never think in terms of divergent and convergent. Like, have I been divergent enough to have all the possibilities calculated? And while converging also, you need to make sure like I have converged only with solid data points. So for example, if I'm in a problem solving situation where I'm trying to choose a cloud, GCP or AWS, right? So I think there has to be very strong data points behind how I have come down to selecting GCP over AWS. Yeah. Affinity mapping, again, it is defined. So what happens is, like I explained you, so a lot of empathy processes, if you see, will generate a lot of data for you, right? Like what is customer looking for, what are the goals, what are the target, what are the probable solutions, right? Now in define stage, we are trying to go closer to the solution and the scope also. Like I mentioned earlier, the scope of the problem statement we are telling. So affinity mapping is nothing. It says whatever raw data you've got via different interviews, surveys, right, or different analysis. So it is telling you, you should always have this habit of clustering this into certain areas, right? For example, if you see an example here, so they have clearly distinguished all the inputs they've got to define the scope correctly now into feature. What are the feature requests? What are the UX usability request? What is environment enablement and support request? What is accessibility, and what are the bugs and fixes there? So different categories you need to club now to really structure your data correctly, which you are doing in define. So you can already visualize by these models, you are now going more convergent towards a convergent way. Fishbone diagram, again, very popular diagram. And I think a lot of us would have already used Fishbone, where you say, I will always put the problem on the fish head of the fish, and then all the wings or the bones of the fish will represent the areas, and then we will sub branch those areas with what are the possible root causes for these areas, the problem that is ongoing, which leads to this problem, which is represented at the fish head. So again, the idea here is to brainstorm and to capture data correctly, and then to pinpoint the area where it is going wrong, so that we have all the RC in front of us. Okay. 5 whys, I think there's a lot of debate. So now it is even extended. This has been so effective. Now it is extended, I think, to 9 whys, not 5 whys. But I kept 5 whys, keeping in mind there can be people who are new to design thinking. So what is 5 why? So the number is very important if you look at it. So what I'm trying to tell you is, with now modern approach in design thinking, the 5 has changed to 9, number 9. You need to ask 9 whys because the number here represents the depth. So this is very similar to roots of the tree, where if you start asking why, and what design thinking says, emphasizes, if you are asking at least 5 times why differently, right? Why are users abandoning checkout, for example? Why is it taking long time for them to do checkout? Why do we need so many extra fields, right? So Yaros, I can see you want to ask a question.
Hi, Vikas. Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if you want to finish this segment and then we can answer a couple of questions.
Yeah, so let me just cover define, and then let's take questions. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you see, right, a lot of time we'll all agree, right? We approach a project or a problem statement where we just think about the problem statement, we understand the user personas, and then we say, okay, we've done the work. But you should see the power of why. So if you ask 5 whys around your solution that you're building, so what designing thinking says is, you will really address a lot of different angles to your solution already with only 5 whys. Okay, now they have extended it to 9 whys. Why they have done that is because, see, I'll give you a classic example of cars, right? What is our problem in today's world? Global warming, right? We all know. But then we built cars a long time back. But what design thinking thought process says is, if we would have taken aspect of, let's say, sustainability, or let's say if it is negatively impacting the environment, or a negative impact of a solution into the umbrella of 5 whys, right? So we could have avoided, or at least we could have tried to build a solution which is not that much harmful for the environment, right, while we were building cars, right? So you can understand why they've extended it to 9 whys. So they're trying to say, don't only cover the whys which are very important and on the positive side, also try and cover 5 whys which are like negative, in terms of you should check your use case. Is it sustainable? Is it not creating anything which will be hard to maintain or maybe have a negative impact? Okay, so this is why the depth of whys is very important. So I've covered both 5 and 9 into this slide. Yes, I think, Ross, we can take a pause here. So we've covered empathy and define stages till now. Yep.
Great. Thank you. So we had a couple of questions come in, Vikas, and I'll read them for you. The first question is, can you share examples of how design thinking has helped organizations overcome internal resistance to change, especially in legacy or highly regulated industries?
Yes. So there is a very classic example I have personally dealt with in because I also have 16 years into industry now, and I work for Deutsche Telekom. It's a German setup, right? And I think the question somebody is asking here is very fitting to the scenario I faced recently. So DT is primarily a very old telco, right? So they have a lot of legacy systems into play, and I represent the data and analytics space in DT, right? So we do all the latest stuff, machine learning, artificial intelligence, analytics, which can really help us do a lot of meaningful analytics on very huge unstructured data in a very quick way, right? Identifying the patterns, building the patterns. So one of the challenges we faced there was, so these legacy teams, right, people are working for one unit for 20 years, 25 years in DT, right? And with this automation and analytics coming into play, right, so one of their concern was, will it be like it is there to replace us, right? It will reduce the number of manual work hours required, right? So it will ultimately result in downsizing of the team, right? So we face this pushback, and how we resorted to solving this and design thinking was, so one of the key aspects of design thinking, if you see, is collaboration. And this is the exact reason why design thinking really treats your collaboration very important, right? So how we addressed this was, we really onboarded all these stakeholders, the people representing those voices from the legacy systems, right, into the transformation. So we explained them in a regular meetings and sync ups why we are attempting this program. B, what is gonna be the consequence or the outcome of the program that we are trying to do. And another aspect we covered was, this is not to replace you, this is to help you, how this is going to make your life easy. Because what was happening was, so if one issue came up, right, they were spending 2 3 days non-stop to find the root cause of the problem, because network is very complex in nature. It is like almost 25 different teams, and each component is very complex, and they were not able to identify where the issue is. With analytics coming into play, identifying the patterns, we were able to pinpoint this box the problem can be. And this is where, Ross, we saw a lot of cooperation from them, positive. Like initially we feared they will not cooperate with this assumption, but once we really did these design thinking workshops of onboarding them onto why the solution is being built, we took a lot of inputs from them. So they understood the overall goal, and they also agreed like this is not something to replace, this is to make their life easy also. Yeah, I hope
Okay.
it answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, change is always a challenge, but good communication, collaboration usually solves the issue. I have another question here, Vikas. Looking ahead, how do you see design thinking evolving with the rise of AI and data-driven product development? And will it change the role of empathy and human-centered design?
So I really look at it in a very different space. So like you see, design thinking in its definition itself, they have very diligently covered this aspect. It's a human-centered approach. So we have to really focus on this word, human-centered. So it is not a technology-driven approach, first thing. Okay. So always think design thinking of something which is common sense, which is all about structure. Whereas if you look at AI, it is more about productivity, the speed of handling things, efficiently doing things with accuracy. Whereas design thinking doesn't talk about, let's say, accuracy, preciseness, or those metrics, right, into play. So how I feel is, design thinking will go hand in hand with AI. Okay. So you imagine, you cannot survive if you say, I know AI very well. Okay, I know where to apply AI into the life cycle of problem solving, but I'm not well versed with the basics of problem solving. What is the life cycle of problem solving, which stage I am in, right? Because even to leverage AI or harness AI correctly, you need to have these fundamental understandings of design thinking. So design thinking is more structure, more mindset. AI is more of a technology ability to do things faster, impacting your productivity, your problem solving stuff, and also your ability to, let's say, scan a lot of data to have meaningful insights out of data. Design thinking is totally different, so they will go hand in hand. This is how I see the future.
Okay. And we have one more question. I'm just looking at the clock. We have about 7 minutes left. I know there's a lot of good material remaining in your presentation. I could ask one more question that we have submitted, or if there's anything that you want to go over in your presentation to wrap that up.
Mhm.
Um,
I think
what
I
do you
think
think?
let's take one question and then I'll wrap up
Okay.
in 5 minutes the remaining sections, because it's gonna be essential. The first part was very important, laying the right foundation. The next pieces are gonna be built on similar foundation. We can cover that quickly, and then obviously we can discuss at end, like maybe there is one more session we can do, like a workshop where we focus heavily on the models itself, right? Because that'll take time that we cannot cover here.
Sorry for
Okay.
interrupting. Actually, I have created another meeting, so if we have the time, we can jump into that meeting right after this call, so you can finish up everything that's important, not to just skip important information. So we have that option. I can share the link in the chat, so we can all continue there, and let me know what works for you. Like if you have a lot to cover, because we can cover in that separate meeting. If not, we can wrap
Think
everything.
I would say another 30 minutes, if it is okay with all the participants as well, because I'm not sure if they have the time for that, right? Or otherwise
Uh,
we'll cover in another session. We can do
yeah,
that.
yeah, actually, the good thing here, we are recording this, and we will definitely use this content to share with those busy product managers that were not able to join the meeting. We will share this information on YouTube. Even all the attendees that would like to rewatch and access the presentation, definitely we will share with them. So it's not going to be an issue. I will share the link of the Zoom meeting here. We will start right after this meeting yet. So because take your time to finish up and wrap up whatever you want to, and then we will continue in that another meeting.
Okay, so
Thank
then
you, Tatev.
let's take this question from Ross, right? So let's cover that
Perfect.
first.
Yeah.
Before I give you that question, and before we jump to the other link to continue the presentation, for anyone who has to jump off because we only had this scheduled for 1 hour, I want to let you know that I want to first say thank you to Vikas for sharing your time and experience and expertise on the subject. But I wanted to let everyone know that Vikas is also a product coach on the PMA platform. So if you need to jump off, but you'd like to connect and continue the conversation with Vikas, you can find him in the community. All right. So keep that as an option. If you're not able to join us on the new link. And also, if you're not already part of the PMA community, I'd love to extend a personal invitation for you to join. It's free to sign up at productmanagementadvisor.com. You'll find courses, expert support like Vikas and others, and we're a growing network. We launched 2 months ago. We have 160 members in 60 days, which we're very proud of. We have great people joining us, and we'd love for you to join us as well. So with that, we're at the top of the hour. Tatev, should I ask a question or should we break here and join on the new link?